Hey everyone, Callie here. I am with Shadow Mountain Publishing, and we are excited to have our Romance on the High Seas event with Arlem Hawks and Julie Wright. So before I bring them on, I just wanted to introduce each of them first. So we have Arlem Hawks, and Arlem's joining right now. She's right there. And so she's the author of Jordana's Secret right here. And about Arlem, just a little bit about her. Arlem began making up stories before she could write. Living all over the Western United States and traveling around the world gave her a love of cultures and people and the stories they have to tell. She has a bachelor's degree in communications with an emphasis in print journalism. She lives in Arizona with her husband and 3 children. And we have Jordana's Secret is her debut proper romance that released in January of this year. So we are excited to have Arlem with us. And next we have Julie Wright.
Hey.
And Julie Wright was born in Salt Lake City. She's lived in LA, Boston, and the middle of nowhere. She wrote her first book when she was 15, and since then she's written 25 novels and co-authored 3. Julie is a 2-time winner of the Whitney Award for Best Romance with her books Cross My Heart and Lies Jane Austen Told Me, and is a Crown Heart recipient. She has 1 husband, 3 kids, 1 grandbaby, 1 dog, and a varying amount of houseplants, depending on attrition. She loves writing, reading, traveling, hiking, snorkeling, playing with her family on the beach, and watching her husband make dinner. And a captain for Caroline Gray, right here behind me, is Julie's first Regency proper romance, and that is coming March 2nd of this year. So we are very excited to have Arlem and Julie with us today. So send them your love. And so we just wanted to have each of you tell us a little bit about both of your books. So Arlem, if you wanted to go first and just tell us a little bit about Jordana's Secret, that'd be great.
Okay. Jordana's Secret is about a girl who has been taken to sea by her father and disguised as a cabin boy to protect her from some bad stuff going on at home. And while she's there, she decides she doesn't actually love this life. She doesn't love being a boy, and she's ready to leave until a lieutenant comes on board and kind of upends her whole world and shows her a different side of life that she hasn't been able to see.
Thanks. And Julie, can you tell us a little bit about Captain for Caroline Gray?
Captain for Caroline Gray is about Caroline Gray, obviously. And she has been through several seasons and not procured a spouse. And she's about to be removed from her family home because her cousin is inheriting and he's finally getting married, and he let them stay as long as he could, but it's time to go now. And she's out of options, and she has no prospects, and she has no money and has nowhere to go. And so her mother meets up with a woman whose son is in India, and he's a captain in the military there. And she says, I think he would really like her. I would be willing to pay for half of her voyage to go to India and meet him. And so Caroline, with no other options, agrees to do this. And this is actually a phenomenon called the fishing fleet women. And it's something that I learned about from, I learned about it, and I'll explain that all later. But it's really fascinating, and it's her voyage and falling in love with a captain, but not the one she was supposed to. And so it's the captain of the ship, where she's very unconventional. She's very much a blue stocking with lots of opinions, and she's great. Anyway, it's a fun story, and I really enjoyed writing it.
It is super fun. So what was like the basic inspiration for both of your books? And maybe Arlem, did you want to go first?
Yeah. So actually, the inspiration for Jordana came when I was researching for another book that I actually haven't written. I was going to look into the Royal Navy just to get a little bit of background on a character I was going to write, and I fell down a research rabbit hole and just became so fascinated with the Royal Navy and these gentry class gentlemen who were leaving behind that kind of cushy life that they had in Regency England and going to sea, where it was a very harsh life and completely different. And so I really wanted to write a story about that. And I don't know exactly where the specific idea for Jordana came, but it just kind of flowed from that.
Oh, that's totally cool though. And Julie, what about you?
But as I was saying earlier, I was on a writing retreat with Josie Kilpack and Nancy Allen and a few other writers I just love. And they were doing the Regency books, and I was writing my contemporary Lies Jane Austen Told Me. So we were all working on kind of different things, but they had these great, things that they were researching. They were talking about women with no prospects and the fishing fleet women and how sad that situation would have been. And I'm like, wait, what? Fishing fleet? What is that? And so Josie explained to me that was where women who had no prospects in England would travel to India or to any of the colonies. And because the men who were there, who had already colonized those areas, they were in need of English brides. And so these women had offers almost immediately from stepping off the gangplank. They were, or the not gangplank, whatever. My brain's not working great. But as soon as they got off the boat, there's all these men just making offers, inviting them to balls and dinners, and all these invitations were happening. They're basically engaged almost from the moment they step foot on land. And I'm like, really? That's just crazy. I can't imagine being willing to do that. So then that was my rabbit hole of research. And I got a bunch of books and read them and just was fascinated. The Women of the Raj was very interesting to me, and sad for lots of reasons, but it was really very cool. It was a cool research experience, and it just kind of all flowed from there.
Awesome. That's really cool to kind of hear the background of both of those books, and what got you excited about those ideas. And so now they're full-blown books, which is awesome. So I wanted to do something fun here at the beginning and just kind of like get your feel. So we want to do some this or that questions. So I'll just say like this or that for specific things, and then you just give me your answer and we'll just kind of go through them really quick. How does that sound? Okay.
Good.
So Regency or contemporary?
Regency.
Yes.
Yes. That's fair. So how about swimming with sharks or swimming with dolphins?
Dolphins for me.
Yeah, it's got to be the dolphins. I'm not a good enough swimmer to survive the shark situations. So.
Makes sense. How about sailing or boating?
Sailing.
Go on a cruise or work on a ship?
I don't know on this one.
I
work on a ship.
It's a lot of work working on a ship.
It is a lot of work. It's true.
When you go on a cruise, you just eat a lot and look at the beautiful scenery. Because I love food, I'm going to go on a cruise. I just want to eat all day. That's my favorite.
You could also work on a cruise. There's that option.
I don't think they eat as well when they're working it versus being on it.
That's also true. So how about an amusement park or a day at the beach?
Beach.
That is so yes. That's just so much yes.
How about city or countryside?
Countryside.
That one's hard for me. I like in the middle.
Fair. There's benefits to both for sure.
Yes.
Winter or summer?
Summer.
Winter.
Absolutely.
Winter, I'm about done with winter right now.
I miss it being in Arizona. I miss having winter.
See, I'm in St. George, but I figure I can visit winter. Winter is one of those wonderful things you can visit. You don't have to live there. But I would much rather live in summer. I like being warm. I don't have to shovel heat. I don't have to scrape heat off of my windshield. There's summer. Yeah, it's all about that.
I'm with you there. How about ocean or mountains?
Ocean for me. Although it's close.
That's another yes. I think a mountain next to an ocean is ideal.
Oh, that would be wonderful, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Hiking in the morning and beach in the afternoon.
Yes. See, you get it. That's a perfect life right there.
Oh yeah. How about sunshine or storms?
I personally like storms because we don't get them very often.
My favorite word in the English language is petrichor. That smell of rain, of that wet dirt in the air, that rain in the air. It's called petrichor. It's a fantastic word, and I love that smell. And it's really that's another yes, because
I
we've
didn't
already
know there
established
was
I
a
like
word
sunshine.
for it.
There's a word. Isn't it a great word too?
It's a great word. I'm totally gonna use that now. Petrichor. Learn something new every day.
I got it from Doctor Who. Not gonna lie, that's where I learned that word.
Hey,
So,
Doctor Who's great. Would you rather be born in the future or the past?
This one was super hard for me.
Me too.
I think I would go with past only because I know what it's like. Although if you're being born into it, I don't know. That kind of makes it weird. But I know what's in the past. Who knows what's coming in the future? So
There's a lot of dodgy things in the past, though.
There's a lot of dodgy things in the past, but who knows?
Really, and the future's here's where my biggest issue. I always tell my husband I should have been born in a horse and buggy era because technology is terrifying to me. And so I think, well, yeah, obviously I should have been born in the past. But then there's that whole running water and women can vote.
Yes.
I just like, oh, that's all really. That's why I would have to say I would like to be born in the future probably, because that running water, hot water is delightful. I don't know.
It's so
What if
important.
in the future the world falls apart and there is no hot water? What if something terrible happens?
Would you rather be European or American?
I think this is a yes answer for me. I love being American. I love Europe. I love the friends that I have in Europe. And so, yeah, I don't know.
Good answer.
That's a yes for me too. Here's the thing with being European. If you're European, chances are good you speak 5 languages. So that's pretty cool. I really like that aspect of it. And the history is beautiful. And we're too quick to tear down buildings here in America. We just rip them down and move on. And it's like, oh, I wish we would have hung on to that for a little bit. So I don't know. It's a yes in both ways, because I love being in America as well. But Europe is pretty awesome.
Indeed. London or Paris?
Paris.
London.
Morning or night?
Night.
Yeah, I'm probably night too.
Read for 2 hours or write for 2 hours?
For me, it would be right, I think.
Yeah, it's probably right for me as well.
Singing or dancing?
What was that again? Say that again.
Singing or dancing?
Oh, dancing. Nobody wants to hear me sing. I don't even want to hear me sing.
I like both, but I would rather have people see me dance than hear me sing.
All right, last one. Book or ebook?
I would say book. I do like ebooks, especially for research, but
I would have to say ebook, and the reason why is because I hundreds and thousands of them at my disposal at any moment. Whereas a book, I have the one, and then when it's done, it's like, man, and you're done. Like when you're on an airplane, I love the ebook. It's pretty great.
Perfect. Hey, thanks for doing that with me. That was super fun. I love getting to know each of you a little bit more. So now we have a fan submitted question from Catherine Rowberry. And so she's going to come on screen and share that with us right now.
Hi, my name is Catherine Rowberry. I have been reading Jordana's Secret. I got it for my birthday and I am loving it. So my question to both Arlem and Julie, since Julie's new book is also along the same theme, is what got you both interested in this type of theme, where both of these books have to do with being on the open sea and captains and lieutenants, just what got you interested in doing these types of books? So that's my question for you. Thank you.
So I'll let you two take it away.
Arlem, I'll let you go first.
Okay. As I kind of mentioned earlier, I fell down the Navy rabbit hole and just became fascinated with that life. And yeah, there's so much to it, and there's so much to learn, and there's so much to explore. And the stories that I read about the real people, and it was so fascinating to me. And actually it was interesting because after I just had this inexplicable pull towards this subject and these people. And after I wrote Jordana, I was looking through my family history, and I actually found 3 generations of Royal Navy sailors in my family history. And one of them was during the Regency era, and the rest of them were Victorian era. So I just thought that was cool. It was a cool connection to my past, which is something that's really important to me. And yeah, I don't know.
No, that's really cool. I like that. And Julie?
For me, like I said, it was, that concept of the fishing fleet women in East India, it started with the East India Trading Company in the 1600s, where they would send women for men that they had working there. And it just continued on. And I just thought, what would make a woman leave home and country, everything she knows, everything she loves, for a future that is very, very unstable and insecure, and there's nothing secured in her future by leaving? And how bad has it got to be? What are your options? How are they? That was the question for me. How bad does it have to get before you were willing to take on that? And I know there were some women who were super adventurous and they're like, woohoo, I'm just going to go to a different country that I don't speak the languages and I don't know the culture, and that's okay. I'm going to be great and it's going to be fun. And sea travel was super treacherous. There were pirates and there were storms and any number of things. There was, bad food, and any number of things could go wrong on a voyage. And yet these women still did it by the droves. And it was just fascinating to me to think, what would induce you to make such a choice? And am I strong enough to have made that choice? And the answer for me is, I don't know. But it was fun to explore that a little bit through my character, to see what she was capable of doing. And she has far greater strength than I do. So
that's the fun thing about writing, is being able to explore someone completely different from you and being able to share that and bring them to life. So I think that's one thing why we love books so much, is being able to escape into this romance, especially when it's on this romantic high seas. And so I wanted to ask both of you, what do you think is the most romantic part about sailing or the ocean?
I think the unknown. There's so much that can come up. Every day the sea is going to be slightly different. So I think that adventure is one of the things that makes sea fiction so romantic, and just its vastness. I mean, the ocean is just so big and has so many secrets, and yeah, that's a pull for me, the romantic pull for me.
No, it makes sense. It's like, I guess the one thing we haven't truly explored is the ocean, just similar to like open space. It's like the last, I think there's a term for it, like the last great exploration or something. I can't think of it, but Julie, what about you?
I have to agree with that. The vast potential that is the ocean. The way from moment to moment you're standing on somewhere new in the earth. It's every moment you're somewhere different, and every time you look at it, it's changing. And there was one moment where I was in Europe and walked out on deck, and there was the ocean was like glass. It was like a mirror, and it was I didn't know that an ocean could be perfectly still like that. And it was unsettling and exciting all at the same time. The ocean just has lots of fantastic potential to it. And it does give you that wonderful adventure of the unknown. And there's definitely that romantic pull there.
Oh yeah, for sure. And so, like, I mean, with romance, you have this great setting of being on the open ocean, on close quarters in a tight ship. But it wouldn't be a romance without a love interest, of course. So tell us a little bit more about your dashing heroes. Julie, you have Captain Scott in A Captain for Caroline Gray. And Arlem, you have Lieutenant Peyton in Jordana's Secret. So maybe just tell us, like, maybe what you love most about each of them. And Julie, would you want to go first?
Sure. For Captain Scott, he's kind of cynical, and he's a different hero than I've ever written before. Usually I write very, very likable heroes and a little less likable heroines, and I don't know why that is. It's my own personality. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's because I feel like I'm a little prickly sometimes. But he's actually the one who's a little bit more prickly in this particular instance, because he's just seen a lot of women. He looks at the fishing fleet women as they're throwing their lives away. And so when he sees them, he's just like, you've got to be crazy to do that, to go and deal with this future that may or may not be good. And it is often not great for them. And they end up in situations that they're not happy about. And so for him, he's just super cynical about that. So he ferries these women back and forth, but he doesn't love it. And so he kind of treats Caroline with a little bit of disdain, because she's one of those silly women heading to this terrible future that he thinks is a terrible future. And when he discovers that she's highly intelligent and very compassionate, he finds that because, she's pretty, and so of course he likes, she's pretty, but pretty is not enough. And so he still thinks she's silly until he gets to know her. And then he's like, oh, wow, she's got so much. She's like the ocean. There's a lot of depth to her. And so he softens up, and it's fun to watch him and his character arc, where he's very pragmatic about everything that he does. This is how we act. This is how we do. And your behavior, your good behavior should always be good behavior. There should be no exceptions. He's not that kind of exception kind of guy. And yet he learns with Caroline that sometimes life has exceptions, and sometimes compassion is the greater choice over right and wrong. I mean, because there's right and then there's compassionate right. And I think he gets lost in that a little bit. And so it was kind of fun to do that character arc with him, because he's actually very intelligent and super fun, devastatingly handsome, which is, as all heroes should be. And,
Exactly.
Yes, it helps. You don't have to have a pretty face, but it's nice when you do.
Oh, it sure is. It wouldn't be a romance without someone being super attractive.
Well, right. And, yeah. This is like, my husband and I kind of laugh. We're like, neither one of us are devastated. We could never be a romance movie. It's like, yeah, that's all right.
But you still love each other.
We do, because love is awesome all the time. But it's so that's just, I love Captain Scott. He's fantastic because there's a lot of compassion, but you have to kind of dig a little to get to it.
Very true. Well, we can't wait to get to know Captain Scott some more when the book comes out in March. And now I know a lot of people have read Jordana's Secret, and I'm seeing all the love for Lieutenant Peyton in the comments. So, Arlem, why don't you tell us what you love most about Lieutenant Peyton?
I think what I love most about Dominic is he's a romantic, which I am also a romantic. So that's super fun. It was really fun to write things from his perspective. He also has this kind of infectious joie de vivre, and it was just so fun. It was so fun to write a character like that, who just kind of embraces every day as it comes and sees the storms for the adventure that they'll bring. And yeah, he's a very capable lieutenant. He is very firm, but he knows that sometimes you need to be compassionate, and he is pretty good at determining when those times are, and which I think is really important in a leader. There are times when you do have to be tough, and there are times when you do have to be gentle. And that was really fun to write a character like that.
That's awesome. And obviously he's super romantic, so that helps always. We actually have a really great question in the comments that I wanted to share. So Shaylin asks, was it hard to write a story where the setting is almost exclusively on a small boat?
Actually, I found it kind of easy compared to a regular Regency because there were lots of reasons why they would be thrown together.
That's true.
Whereas when you're writing a regular Regency, you kind of have to think, okay, how am I going to get them together? They'll have to like go on a walk and happen to meet each other, or go to a ball, or go to a dinner party. Like you're kind of trying to contrive all of these reasons for them to be together, especially to be alone together. But on the ship, you're going to be thrown together. So I like that part of it.
That's smart.
With writing with the small environment, it's nice because it's contained and allows people to get on each other's nerves a little easier. And especially whereas mine's like but there's like a miniature season that happens on the ship because there are a bunch of women there, and it's and by a bunch there's like 6, so a bunch. But they have to learn how to deal with each other. And there's a lot of the cattiness that happens with girls who feel like they're in competition with each other. And yet there's a character arc for one of the women who you just kind of hate her. I despised her the whole time I was writing her. Like, she's the worst. This is like my worst enemy I'm writing here. And then she super surprised me at the end. And so I hope you guys enjoy that. She was a fun surprise. I'm like, oh, I did not see that. I wrote the scene and I'm like, well, that was exciting. I didn't see that coming. It was very cool. But I liked the small environment because, especially like Arlem said, for the romance, you don't have to contrive ways for them to get together. They have to be together at certain points because there's not a lot of places for them to go. They're very confined. And it was actually it was easy to write. It was a lot easier to write than I thought it was going to, just because there weren't all those extra options. So then you had to figure out how to make it work in this small little space. And it was a fun writing exercise. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. And for some reason, it hadn't occurred to me. Like, when you are on that small boat, of course you're going to run into each other. Of course there's going to be opportunities for romance. So there's definitely benefits to that. And I think one of the things is living in Utah and Arizona, we're kind of landlocked. And so I was curious as to what your research process was into writing the ship and the ocean for each of you.
Well, for me, my husband actually is from California, And so we travel to California often, and we go to the beach together as a family often. So there was that. I also, as part of my research for this, went to San Diego to the Maritime Museum and spent an entire day from like the opening of the museum till closing, going through these ships and seeing them from all different angles and seeing them in the mist in the morning and at night, when it was all dark and the lights were on, the little lights were on all across the water. And my husband was amazing for letting me drag him on this, because it was supposed to be like our anniversary trip, and I was just geeking out about ships the entire time. I also, it was slightly after Jordana. I wrote the first draft of Jordana, but it did lead to some edits and stuff for Jordana. But I went and sailed on the Lady Washington, which is a brig that's based out of Washington State. And that was one of the coolest experiences ever. It was amazing. And so despite being landlocked, I found a few ways to get my ocean research in.
And traveling for research is certainly the best.
Yes.
And for those of you who haven't been to the San Diego Maritime Museum, highly recommend it. It is amazing to experience. Julie, what about you?
So for me, I had it planned to go to the San Diego Museum. That was actually, the Maritime Museum was absolutely where I was going. I was heading it. I had planned on videoing the whole thing and writing everything down. I was so excited to go. And then the pandemic hit and I wasn't able to because they closed it down. And every time that I've had time off where I could go, I've just hit it wrong and I've not been able to. Like, I just thought for sure I'd be able to go in December and I just wasn't, because I'm like, well, a little kind of post-research exercise. I was so excited to go and I didn't get to then either. So a little heartbroken over that. But my father happens to be a naval captain for the American Navy and United States Navy, I guess is how we call it. But he was so valuable for research, and he gave me lots of great information. And my dad's super, super, super hyper intellectual. I don't know where I came from, but sometimes he would give me information. I'm like, I don't know what that means. I don't understand what you just said. So it was a lot of just research. There was a lot of reading, and I watched a bunch of other people's videos that got to go to the San Diego Maritime Museum. So that was fun to at least be able to do it virtually. But a lot of reading for me and my father, obviously, who's pretty awesome.
Perfect. Yeah. You can go one day when this pandemonium is over. So speaking of research, we did have a question from Elle Stewart, and I will share that with you all now.
Hi, I'm Elle Stewart, and I would love to know from our authors what their favorite historical nautical fact was that they came across in their research. I cannot wait for the new book, Julie, and Arlem, I love you!
She's so sweet. So either one. Arlem, you want to take that?
Take it, Arlem.
Thank you so much, Elle. My favorite nautical fact. One thing that I found incredibly interesting, I do mostly Royal Navy research as opposed to like merchant research, but I did think that it was really interesting how many men they packed onto these Navy ships. HMS Deborah in Jordana's Secret has about 300 men on it. A ship of the same size that was a merchant ship would have like 20 to 30 men on it, as opposed to 300. And it was just so interesting how many men they had to have, because they were manning these gun crews that needed 10 to 15 men to be able to fight in battle, to man these cannons. Whereas you have in the merchant they were just trying to make as much profit as possible, and they would be like hiring as few people as possible so that they could keep as much money as they could. And it actually is really interesting because on a Navy ship, they didn't actually work as hard as they would on a merchant ship, because you had so many people. You didn't need all of them all of the time. And so you'd actually have a decent amount of downtime on a Navy ship, which is kind of funny. Being military, you'd think that, oh, they'd be working a lot harder than anybody else. But no, actually, they had several moments to just relax and sleep. And so I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that was surprising to me as well. That was one of those things of like, wow, they really packed them in there. There was, it was crazy. Elle, that was a great question. One of my favorite things that I learned about ships specifically is that they had a carpentry shop inside the ship. I just thought that was really cool because it's super unique, and I just, of course they would have to, right? I mean, they're on a ship. If something breaks down and you need to retool it or get it fixed or whatever, of course there's a carpentry shop. But the fact that there was one was just fascinating to me. That they had a room set aside for that was just super interesting to me. And I loved the idea of a little carpenter shop in the thing, and all boats back then had to have them, because if you reach a storm and something breaks, well, you have to be able to fix it on the sea. And it's not like you can take it into a repair shop and say, hey, I need to get this taken care of. You had to get it done right there, or because your life was on the line for it. And so the little things that they had, it really is like a little miniature city floating around in the ocean. They had to be able to be self-sufficient and have all of the little necessities that they would need. They had to be able to mend everything on the fly, and it was just very cool.
That is pretty awesome. Arlen, when you were talking, that made me think. When your research, so Jordana is a cabin boy in disguise on her father's ship when the story begins. So when you were researching, did you come across any accounts of women who had done this?
Yes. There are actually several that we know of, probably more that we don't know of. And I've actually come across even more names in my continued research after writing Jordana. I found a new one last week or the week before in my Navy research. There were definitely women that did it. And there were women that didn't get caught. There were women that were there for years and years. There was one French woman actually around it was Napoleonic War, she was in the army, and then she switched to the Navy, and she was a POW in England for a little while. But I think she was in the Navy for 10 to 12 years total. And they at least didn't report her if anybody knew. So yeah, it would have been difficult, but not impossible as it would seem with that many people on the ship.
That's just incredible to me. Like, there's so many men on board and they just had no idea. But sometimes things just sneak past like that. That's really cool. I didn't know that there were so many different accounts like that. And Julie, I had a question for you too. Was it common for European women in this time period to agree to an arranged marriage in like a far off land like India?
It was way more common than you would imagine. Like I said, there were thousands of women who did it, but they were looked down upon a little bit because the term fishing fleet women was not kindly given. It was an insult, because they were off fishing for husbands. It was kind of she can't get a husband here in England, so she has to go abroad to find a match. And it was kind of an insult. It wasn't the nicest thing. So, but there were thousands of women who did it, and they, some of them, they turned out to be, their lives turned out to be really, really great, and they were able to get status, and not in such great ways for, sometimes when you're going to the colonies. That colonization's a whole other whole other topic that I tried really hard to figure out how to. Anyway, that was a whole thing. But it was fascinating to me how many women were willing to go and do that, and especially since they weren't necessarily treated well by the women that they left behind. But the good news is you probably weren't going to see those women ever again, so it wasn't really going to matter. So
No, that makes sense because in literature, like an arranged marriage, and especially in romance, like can like be romantic in its own way, but in real life, not so much. So I always found that a little interesting. So we're coming close to time, but I have a couple more questions for each of you. So without giving us any spoilers, what was your favorite part to write in your respective books?
Okay. I don't think this is a spoiler, but my favorite part to write was before Dominic found out Jordana's secret. Especially when he was kind of catching on to there's something different about this cabin boy and trying to figure out what it was. I was just giggling the whole time that I was writing those scenes because he'd say something that he would never say to a woman, especially not a woman that he liked. And I would just giggle and say, "Oh, Dominic, you're going to really hate that when you figure this out." And then he'd kind of get close to it, but be completely off in a different way. And so that was super fun and laughing at Dominic's expense.
Oh, yes, for sure. What about you, Julie?
there was a scene where there had been a really horrific storm the night before, and Captain Scott's furious because Caroline and one of the other women had gone out on deck during the storm in spite of very strict rules that they should stay below deck. And so he called both of them to his cabin to chew them out. His goal was to just rip them to shreds. And the other woman, she immediately apologizes. She's like, "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. It was so scary, blah, blah, blah." And she's blubbering about how sorry she is. And he looks at Caroline like, "Okay, now here's your apology. Let's hear it." And he's like, "So tell me your side of the story." And she says, "No." And he's the captain of the ship. You don't say no to the captain of the ship. He's like, "Wait, what?" And she's like, "No, you don't really want to hear my side of the story. You came here to scold me." And she kind of lights into him, and she gives him a scolding that is just fantastic. And she leaves, and she turns on a heel, and she just kind of walks out. She's like, "I'm tired. As you so politely stated, I was up all night and I need some rest now." And so she goes and she leaves. And he's just sitting there, wait, what just happened? And then just a couple of scenes later, the two of them are really rocky, and they're very much an enemies to lovers sort of a situation. But there's another scene where a little boy is he's having some issues there, and he runs into Caroline, and she goes to protect him. And it's the scene where the two of them kind of find a groove for each other, and that was a fun scene to write too. I just liked when she's just so sassy with him, like, "Oh, don't you tell me what to do." And I just love her. She's super awesome. She's like one of my very favorite women that I've ever written as far as characters go. I just love her.
Those are awesome. There's so many comments of people saying they love the books and they can't wait to read them if they haven't read them. And so for the readers who maybe haven't read them or will read them, what is the message that you hope they will take away after reading your books? Arlem?
I think one of the things that I try to do with my stories is present strong female characters that are not the stereotypical strong female character. We kind of think when we hear that term that it means like a warrior woman type. And those are fun stories, and those are great stories. But one thing that's important to me is showing that there are other types of women who have quiet strength, who are still strong female characters in their own right. And you don't have to be slinging a gun or carrying a sword or being one of the guys to be a strong female character, that the quiet ones can also be strong.
That's so perfect. I love that answer. How about you, Julie?
For me, I hope the big takeaway is that you should just be true to yourself, regardless of what that self is or how that looks like. The captain, he has some things where he needs to be true to himself too. So it's something that both of them need to kind of figure out is how am I going to be true to myself and still be the person I want to be and still accomplish the things that I want to accomplish. And I think that something we can all learn because, there's a lot of give and take in the world. But if you're true to yourself, that give and take doesn't have to be as painful.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. Well, ladies, thank you so much for joining with us today. I wanted to say that Jordana's Secret is available now wherever books are sold, and A Captain for Caroline Gray is available for pre-order right now. It is coming March 2nd, so keep an eye out so you can get your copy soon. And for all of you who have stayed with us through the very end of this event, we wanted to do a little giveaway. So let us know in the comments what is your favorite beach, and we will send 2 winners both copies of Julie and Arlem's books. So we look forward to our next event with all of you, and until then, thanks for coming and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.